So we're here today at Beaulieu, which is down in Hampshire, the magnificent estate of who is it? Is it Lord Beaulieu?
Lord Montague.
Lord Montague of Beaulieu, and it's the 22nd of June, and it's a glorious summer's Sunday, as you can see. I'm here today with Paul Lacey and Vince Dallimore of collectively the Independent Porsche Enthusiast Club and Porsche Club Great Britain. Probably two of the most enthusiastic and knowledgeable 9 to 8 guys, certainly here today, possibly in the UK. You're probably going to be a little bit, should we say, humble about this. So
9to8.org.
And 9to8.org, of course. Yeah, we don't want to miss them out, do we? Yeah, good guys. Lots of brilliant technical resource, so fantastic. But we've got a collection here of perhaps 20, maybe more later in the day, 9 to 8. So I thought we could just talk a little bit about the cars specifically, starting with the early days. So anybody wants to jump in. So the very first cars were, Paul?
Well, 1977 was the release of the 9 to 8, the original version. There's none here today that early, but we've got quite a good selection of models today, and yours is one of the earliest, in fact, your X-Reg S, but we've got all the way up to the GT in 91. There's no GTS here today, which was just after that.
So Vince, what's your favourite 9 to 8? And you can't say your one, okay? Absolutely no.
My sort of interest started as a teenager when the car was launched, and it was just the shape was so fantastic, it's futuristic for a 70s car. And when I got to an age and children off hands and I could actually think about buying one, I just thought the S4 was a lovely compromise car, in the sense that I live in London, I didn't particularly want a manual. GTS, a little bit too racy in the sense of all the extra bits of technical.
What's go wrong, is it, Vince?
I think it's more go wrong.
So your favourite is the S4. So Paul, just take us through. So as you say, we don't have an early car, a Prius, but if we look at the red car here, and this is an S, which is a 4.7 litre with the 3-speed gearbox and with the non-ABS wheels, non-ABS brakes. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about the S in particular, please, Paul?
Well, it was an upgrade. The early cars was a 4.5 litre engine, and they were generally considered to be a bit underpowered, especially with an auto box, which most of them had. So the S was introduced with a 4.7, upping the horsepower by about 30-40 horsepower, and that made it more aligned with other models of that era. But this one's very original, looking at it by this time. A lot have been quite heavily modified and updated.
Yeah. So, what do you mean by modifications and updates?
Well, wheels in particular are changed, spoilers, lighting, a lot of LED lighting coming in, you know. The interior, you've got the original interior, that's pretty rare now. People put the later sports seats in, and also the spoilers on the back, often changed for the early S to the S4 type that you see on the car next to it.
So moving on then, we've got the S2, which if we just stand back for a moment, guys, and quickly look at the cars, I mean, to my mind, and to the uninitiated perhaps, these are two identical cars, but actually very different beasts, aren't they? Vince, do you want to tell us a little bit about the S2? Or should we go to Paul again for that?
I think Paul will tell
We'll go to Paul. So Paul, let's talk about the change from the S to the S2, even though they look quite similar, don't they, in terms of spoilers?
They are very similar. Body-wise, they're almost identical. Same spoilers front and rear. The difference really is the engine has been upgraded yet again with a later fuel injection system and an electronic ignition system, twin distributors and that type of thing, so it's up the power a bit.
And it went from 300 to 310 brake, is that?
310, that's correct.
A bit more torque as well, perhaps?
Went up as well.
And the 4-speed gearbox, I believe, also.
4-speed gearbox, which remained all the way through to the S4. The seats are different as well, with more adjustment in them and so on, and I think that's when the sports seats were first available also.
And of course, when we look at the back to the S for a moment, some of the options on these were quite extensive. This red car doesn't have that many options, but the red car doesn't have a sunroof. the silver S2 does. I know there's a lot of debate, and talking to Vince, Vince, tell us how you feel about sunroof cars compared to non-sunroof cars.
Personally, I've had many cars with sunroofs, and I've always found that I just never used them. Above 30 miles an hour, they're a noise issue. They're always a leak risk. So when I was hunting down my own 928, I spent over a year looking at cars, and when I finally found one that didn't have a sunroof that fitted the bill, that was the one I went for. So no sunroof to me is a good thing.
It's a plus, yeah. And Paul, would you echo that, or have you got a different view?
Yeah, the sunroof is very small. A lot of people call it the letterbox, and it lowers the headroom considerably. So if you ever take the car on a track, for example, you need to wear a helmet, it becomes a problem. With no sunroof, you've got about 1.5 inches, 2 inches extra room above your head.
Tall guys like you, that can be a problem. You look like you're 6'2", and that might be a challenge for.
Yeah. When I go on the track with a helmet on, I'm a bit sort of like this, and I have to have the seat slightly further back than I would like ideally.
So looking round, we've got a plethora. We've got 20 or so 928s. What's the next version that we're going to look at, Paul?
The next version is the S4. Which
can you pick us an S4 up? Okay, so literally well positioned. And this is this Grand Prix white?
This is Grand Prix white, yes.
So do you want to take us through the differences? I mean, seems to be quite a big jump in terms of the spoilers and the wheels and the seats.
Yes, major differences. The whole front and rear end of the car is different. The wings are different. You'll see that the wings on the earlier car go right the way down to the spoiler.
Yep.
And on the S4 they come halfway down. And
I see.
The whole front is
it's very different, isn't it?
Plastic PU as it's called. The wheels again are different. This has got what's called design 90s on it, and rear spoiler obviously.
Yeah, take us through the rear spoiler, because Vince has got a later car, and there were different variations of this S4 spoiler, weren't there?
The 87, which is the model I've got, has the slightly quirky lift-up spoiler, which just allows you better access to cleaning, I think, but they only ran it in the 87 year, I think, Paul. Is that right?
That's correct. In fact, only for 6 months in 87. My S4 also has that lift-up spoiler. It's very, very unusual. And
unusual to this car, even though it's a family hatchback, should we say, with this rear wiper. There was never a wash facility, was there?
No, there was never a wash facility. Even up in 1994, the last GTSs. They didn't have a wash function on the rear screen.
That little noise, by the way, is the overhead monorail at Beaulieu, which is rather lovely to get round the estate on, as opposed to walking. So back to this. So
apart from the body, wheels, interior is slightly different to the S2. The big changes to the engine. The engine's now a V8 5 litre instead of a 4.7. 32 valves instead of 16, 330, 320, 330 horsepower, quite a bit more complex, a lot more electronics involved, things like digital dashboard and so on, all came in with the S4.
And what's after the S4 then? Was there an S5 or not?
No.
So what are you going to pick out for us now? As we walk down the road,
a GT.
A GT. Can we find a GT?
Yes, there's an Amazon green one.
Let's go and have a little look at this green one. So we've got the best of weather here. Oh, by the way, quick look here at a rather different style of rear cover. There's a chap called Champagne Paul in America, and he does these. I don't know if that's come from him or
looks like it might have done.
Perhaps from somewhere else. But he produces specifically bespoke items for 928s.
I think one of the hidden benefits of the of the 928, and in fact, if you look at this car here, it's got the rear seats down, is it's got an enormous load carrying capacity for a sports coupe. And I can vouch that you can get the whole of a university student's room in the back of a 928. Ironing board as well. So
actually you're advocating that students should today spend their grant on a 928 and use instead of a Fiesta or a Clio?
Well, they should contribute to their fathers.
Ah, now that's a different story, yes. So, okay, back to this, Paul. Tell us about this. Is a rather glorious bluey green. What colour is this in? This is Amazon green, okay.
Green, yeah.
And tell us about this. This is a 928 GT, yes?
GT, yes. And these were made from 1989 to 91, only for 2 years. And they're quite special. All GTs have a manual gearbox for one thing, which is relatively rare in any 928. The engine is, let's say, tweaked. It has special camshafts, special pistons and so on, so it's up at 330 at least horsepower, and they're obviously quite rare, the GT.
And is this one of your favourites?
Yes, I've owned 2 GTs in recent years and they are lovely. Yeah.
How many 928s have you actually had go through your ownership in one way or form?
I've had 9.
9? So that's almost an addiction, isn't it?
It is an addiction,
yeah,
I'm afraid.
It gets under your skin, doesn't it?
Yes.
And you also work on other 928s for people on occasion?
I do, yes.
Yeah.
Only as not in a professional way, but I like working on them just as much as driving them, really.
What's the attraction from an engineering point of view and working on them that's so attractive?
It's the German engineering, to be honest. There's nothing that hasn't had a lot of thought gone into the way it's been built and put together. And okay, there's limited room in places and things can be awkward, but if you know the cars well, they are, generally speaking, quite a joy to work on.
And a good one compared to a bad one getting down the road?
Well, I mean,
big difference or not?
Yes, huge difference. If they don't like to be stood for long periods. You get corrosion in the electrics in particular. The engines don't like not being used. I mean, you can notice if you take one to a track that after you've done a track day in one and you leave the track to go home, it runs better than it has for the last several months.
So Vince, what we're advocating is that students buy themselves a 928 with a grant and go and take it on the track, is that right?
I think that they ought to let their fathers take it.
Oh, I see. This is a very misogynistic view. I mean, do we have any lady members driving 928s, Paul, within the organisations? 928.org, TIPEC, PCGB?
I'm only aware of one, and unfortunately she emigrated a couple of years ago. So. But my wife drives one of my 928s.
And they're not that heavy, are they? Even though they're a big car, they've got power steering and power brakes and ABS on the latest cars. Let's take us further down the road then. So we've got the 98 GT. Is that it? Is that the ultimate 928?
It's not the ultimate. There was an SE.
Do we have one here?
No. They made 40 of them, or 42 of them. Very, very scarce, and you don't see them.
And there was one with a flared arch as well, wasn't there? Bigger rear arches?
Yes, that was the GTS.
That was the GTS.
So that came just after the GT in 1992 up until 1995. The last one was sold, but they stopped making them in 94.
Was the SE almost a sort of built more for track? That it was stripped out, it didn't have necessarily all the refinement?
Yeah, a lot of the Porsches are called Club Sport, which is the equivalent to the 928 SE, where it has the minimum of equipment. So, for example, the seats are not full of motors for lumbar adjustment and things like that for lightness. The engine was specially built for that car, and as I say, there were only 42 of them.
So we've got a lovely summer's day here on probably, well, let's be honest, one of the biggest Porsche-only groupings in the UK of this year. There are other events, but this is certainly down in the south, one of the largest. If we were trying to leave somebody with an impression of how to buy a 928, Paul, and what to look for and the prices involved, can you give us an overview? Because they're complex cars, they're quite rare. We don't see many on the roads these days, do we?
No.
And I think a lot of that is perhaps because the cost of restoring or repairing a bad one exceeds the actual value. But take us through the typical values these days.
Well, the values are actually going up quite surprisingly in the last couple of years. And I think there's two reasons. One is that they're becoming more scarce and more collectible and older. But also they've gone past the point now where it was money-wise better to strip one and sell it for parts than to fix it. And there was a stage early last year when approximately 60 were being scrapped a month, 928s, and that's by one big breakers yard up in the north of England.
I'll tell you, why don't we stop the video there, because I'm mindful we're going to run out a bit of time on the platforms we're going to put it on, and then we'll actually do a little bit of a guide about what to look for. Maybe we can do a little bit of a walk around, talk about prices, and talk about some of what we perceive to be the most obvious things to avoid. How's that, guys? Yeah? So we'll just close that now, and then we'll get back on it.